Everybody, and welcome back to Before the Vote. My name is Bella Gentry, and I'm your host. And today we are joined by a very special guest, Senator Linda Coleman-Madison. Senator Coleman-Madison currently serves in the Alabama State Senate, and she has done so since 2006. Before that, she served as a representative in the Alabama House of Representatives, and she also served on the Birmingham City Council. So, welcome, Senator Coleman-Madison. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, so to start us off, I was wondering if you could just tell us a bit about what your job as an Alabama state senator entails.
Well, as you know, we are lawmakers. Basically, we pass legislation that impact the lives of citizens throughout the state of Alabama. A lot of our job is listening to the concerns of the citizens if they have, and of course, elected officials, locally elected officials. There's legislation that they want to introduce to improve the quality of life or their community, their neighborhood, or it could be local governments, county and city. There are a lot of things that local governments don't have the authority to do. They have to come to the legislature to get permission, or we have to pass a law to allow them to do that.
Absolutely. So, what is your favorite part of your job as a legislator?
Um, I guess when we pass legislation, when we work together, we pass legislation, and it really impacts the lives of Alabama citizens to make things better. You know, healthcare is very important. That is something that is a common issue that cuts across the board, that impacts everyone. Um, Recently, we had was going to pass a law, but there was some federal funding that we were able to tap into. The governor agreed to it, and this is the expansion of postmortem. Uh, um, the law allowed women, and most of these women, are all of them, are on Medicaid. Um, they could receive care up to 6 months after giving childbirth. After the child was born, of course, the child is still covered, but the mother had no benefits under this. And there are a lot of complications that could occur during that first year. And so the mother was left out there, unfortunately, without any support. This extended it to 1 year for medical care to ensure that not only the baby but the mother is safe and healthy as well. So it's those kinds of legislation that that we pass that impact the lives of citizens all over the state of Alabama.
Absolutely. Your job as a legislator is so important to just ensuring so many aspects of citizens' lives. So, that's a great answer. So, how did you first become interested in pursuing a career in politics?
Hmm. In high school, I was always a student of history. I don't know why. It was just something that always intrigued me about studying about the past. And people say if you don't understand the past and have knowledge about the past, you're doomed to relive it. And in studying history, you see a lot of patterns sometimes that exhibit itself in current days. Um, I became interested in community events. Of course, I came from a family that always encouraged us to give back and participate in our community. And from a very young age, they always involved us as children in getting involved with community events. And so it was sort of something that just kind of stuck with me. Um, I was neighborhood president after I moved to a community, and this was an area that was not incorporated in the city. So a lot of the services that my neighbors across the highway was getting, because they were incorporated into the city, they had a local government that they could go to and could hear their concerns. We were in an unincorporated area where you had problems like garbage, trying to get a park for children in the neighborhood, with a new community with a lot of parents, young parents. Um, we had a school that was outdated and overcrowded. So there were a lot of basic bread and butter kitchen table issues there. But we could not get the same support because we were not incorporated into the city. So in moving into that neighborhood, one of my first efforts were working to get citizens to sign a petition to get us annexed to the city of Birmingham, which I did. And we brought in 14 square miles of land. Um, which is now a part of the Pratt community in the city of Birmingham. And as a result from that, I went on to be elected as a neighborhood president. Then I was asked to serve on the city council. I was sort of recruited, and I served on the Birmingham City Council for 12 years, and sort of the rest is kind of history. But it all began with those issues in the community of trying to work with my neighbors to resolve issues and finding that within ourselves we could not do it. It took government and it took participation in that government to let your voice be heard. And when we were not a part of the city, we had no voice. And so uh, becoming involved in the political process made a difference in seeing results in what we could do working together.
Yeah, absolutely. That transitions well into my next question. So, since this podcast is all about the importance of teen involvement in government and politics, I wanted to ask why you believe teen political engagement is so important.
I think it's very important. You know, as I said, I was brought up early in life getting involved as a young person. Um, I, my parents and aunts drug me from everything to the marches during the 60s, to Martin Luther King when he was here in Birmingham, to hear his speeches and things like that, and finding out what we could do to make a difference. When I was in high school, I had an opportunity. Well, I was selected as each school selected one person to represent that school in what we call a citizenship tour. And at that particular time, part of this tour was being sponsored by the Birmingham News and Birmingham Post Herald. And on that tour, we went to visit a lot of the HBCU colleges. We went to Washington, D.C., went to New York. But I remember when we went to Washington, and by the way, it was just $150, but and my grandparents reared me. We didn't really have $150, so the school paid half of it for me to attend because they wanted me to go. And I was just so thankful to have that opportunity to represent my school and my community. But one of the things that I remember that stuck with me and I think made a difference in why I do what I do and am, one of the tours that we had was to the Supreme Court. And you have to remember, this was during the 60s and what was going on in Birmingham at that time. So I'm sitting there here, young girl from Hueytown, Alabama, had not really been anywhere. And I'm just in awe. And all of a sudden, you know, all these men come out in these black robes and they take their seats. Something told me, you know, I'm still looking around. Something told me, settle down and pay attention. And by the time I did, one of them mentioned something about Birmingham, Alabama. Now, it did it wasn't lost on me of where I was, the environment that I was in. I knew what was going on at home. I understood the significance of me being where I was at that particular time. And it made a lasting impression on me, the fact that as a young person, as a high schooler in the 11th grade at that particular time, that I was not just witnessing history, I was a part of history and what was going on at home. And my participation was I was helping to make history. So I think that for me, it spoke volumes that as a young person, you can make a difference. And we were making a difference. I remember well when they turned the school out, the high schoolers came to our elementary school and turned the schools out to get the kids to go downtown to march. I was not one of those that marched. Um, because I knew my grandparents would not approve of me going, and then how was I going to get back? I was not, you know. So, but I remember them turning the school out. The teachers locked the doors to prevent kids from leaving. It was the school had the kind of windows that you don't push up, you push out, and some of the kids let the windows out, push the windows out, and climbed out the windows to go. So, knowing the significance of that march, the Children's March, and what was going on in Birmingham, Alabama, and connecting that with what was going on in Washington D.C. and the Supreme Court, um, I realized then that young people play a very significant part in change and world change.
That's such a unique experience to grow up in that time and to have the experiences that you did. That's really cool answer. Segueing off of that, how could teens raising their voice in government specifically aid you in your job as a legislator?
it's good to hear from young people. Some of the best ideas that we have gotten, as a matter of fact, most of the legislation, they say all politics is local. A lot of the legislation that we get come from everyday people, and some of it even comes from young people. When I speak to schools, it's typically that's with the high schools, middle schools. We always go through this scenario of how a bill is passed, how laws are made, and actually, I will divide the class up, and you one is the House, and the other one is the Senate, and we decide on, okay, you got this bill, and we actually take it through that process, and they serve as roles of legislators, and we go through the negotiation process and everything. And I remember at one school, I was at Christian Middle School, and I'm thinking that one of the young people, they wanted to change the law so that kids could get out early. And in the discussion and going through all the scenario of how to pass a bill and the implications, the pros and cons, I said, it's good to listen to the other side sometime, because you begin to see. I tell them I play the devil's advocate with my own legislation, because I want to know what the other side has to say. And oftentimes, they bring out good points. Sometimes not, but sometimes they do. But as we got into the discussion, we talked about, okay, you're going to get out early. Some kids said, well, we have band, we have this as well. You get out early, you won't be having that. Teachers are not going to be staying late. We went through all of that and talked about the implications, because it sounded like a great idea. But then when you start looking at the impact and how it affects the other things that you want to do that you hadn't thought about, then we had the student who brought the idea up, said it's really not a good idea. So I just think that looking at everything that we do, especially in education, and a lot of things that's going on with young people now. We have pages down there. I often take time to talk to the pages that are on the floor. In particular, when it's a piece of legislation, I'll go over, leave my desk, and go over and sit with them and say, okay, this is what's up on the screen right now. And I'll tell them to go and get a copy of the bill. This is what this bill is about. This bill impacts you. So what are your thoughts on it? Other than sitting there and just being an observer. And they have ideas, but a lot of them are very intuitive. They do pay attention. And so I can remember one senator had an idea about, it was something involving kids riding bikes in a community and using hand signals in the whole 9 yards. What, you got little kids out there in the street just riding the bike. And we had some middle school pages, and I sat there and talked to them, and I said, what do you think? They said, that's a bad bill. It's a bad law. We're just kids. And so I went to the podium and I said, you know what? I've just talked to my constituents over here in the corner, and they think it's a bad bill. This impacts them. But you're not too young to have a voice. Legislators, lawmakers will listen. We want to hear from you all. Whether it's an email or text message, or if you see us someplace, yeah, we'd like to hear from you.
Yeah,
But needless to say,
absolutely.
that lawmaker's bill did not pass. And after we talked about it and discussed it, he said, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, that's great. I think you highlighted something that's so great of how teens just have a new perspective that legislators sometimes just can't tap into just because of that age difference. So that's great that you go talk to teens and go talk to youth to get their opinions on things that affect them. So my last question for you is, what advice do you have for teens wanting to get involved in government and politics?
Just do it. There are some local governments, they have, and they may not have. If they don't have, every city and county needs to have some kind of youth advisory. City of Birmingham has the whole department of youth, and the head of that department has, they work with summer jobs, they work with placing young people, they would work with putting them in departments where they are sitting at the table with staff and lawmakers as well. Uh, and in doing so, they have an opportunity, they have their ear, you know, about certain things. But I would say initiate and ask your local government about instituting a youth forum, because whether it's parks and recreation, whether it's education, a lot of people will say, we always say when we run, we're doing it for the future generations. Did we ask the future generations what they wanted? So I think I retired from the city of Birmingham, and I taught. I'm not well. I did teach school. I taught special kids with special needs, but I was director of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and this was compliance. And in the disability community, we have this saying about nothing about us without us. And I think young people should have that attitude. If you're talking about us, if you're trying to pass legislation about us, ask us about it. You know, as young people, you all are more with the technology and everything, but you do have ideas. And sometimes I think adults are maybe intimidated by young people as well, especially teens, because you all have your own language and it's so far advanced in technology than we are. But I think maybe we just need to sit down and talk to you all. But it may not necessarily be us approaching you because we feel that they don't want to be bothered, but they will talk to you if you approach them.
That's great. I love how you said just do it. Those are some great tips. Very practical. Those are all my questions. So thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed speaking with you. It was very informative. So thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Hi everyone. It's Editing Bella here. I'm just popping in to let you all know about a survey that I'm including in the description box of this video. As I mentioned in the previous episode, this podcast is a part of my Girl Scout Gold Award project, and a requirement of that project is that its impact is measurable. So the purpose of this survey is for me to ensure that my podcast is meeting the goals I intended for it to meet. It's just a short Google form, and it's completely anonymous, and you only have to take it once. So if you could just hop down to the description box once you finish this video, click the link, and take the survey, that would be absolutely amazing. It would be so helpful for me in making my project come to life. So that's all. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you found it helpful and informative and also enjoyable. It was a really great experience to film it and record it, so I just truly hope that you got something out of it. Thanks for listening. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.